Summer's a pleasant time, flowers of every color, the water under the hue, and I long for my true lover. I walking still unweary, sleep I can get near, for thinking of my dearie. I walking when I sleep I dream, when I wake I'm merry, sleep I can't get near, for thinking of my dearie. I walking still unweary, sleep I can't get near, for thinking of my dearie. I walking lonely nights come on, while all the lovers sleeping, I think of my bonny life, and blur my eyes with weeping. I walking still unweary, sleep I can get near, for thinking of my dearie. I walking Thank you.
Well, hi folks, what do you think of that? That was tremendous. That's a new way to start this podcast of My Life with Robert Burns. And today we have as guests the Youth Ambassador for Ellisland Farm and the Treasurer of Ellisland Farm. We have Rose and Sara Byers. How are you doing?
Hello. Well, good, thank you. Yes, lovely.
Very nice to see you today. And Rose, that was fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Now, we'll get back to normal. If you've watched these podcasts, you know that our first question is always, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please? And I'll maybe address that to Sara first of all.
So my name's Sara, and I live in Lockerbie, and I am a trustee at Ellisland, and I do also look after the finances, some aspects of finances and memberships as well. I live in Lockerbie with my husband Stuart, who's a farmer. We live on a mostly cattle farm, and we have 3 children. Rose, who's going to be 16 in a few days, Gabriel, who was 14 yesterday, and Seth, who's 9. And they're all keen Burnsians, as are we all. And I work as a media manager for A.W. Jenkinson, which is a forestry and haulage company. I'm a former journalist, and I am half French, half Scottish. I grew up in France, so there you go.
I'm Rose, and as my mum said, I'm going to be 16 in a few days, and I'm the Youth Ambassador at Ellisland Farm, which I have been for quite a few years now. So my job mainly there is to organise events such as the young traditional Christmas concert we have at Christmas obviously, which has been going for 2 or 3 years now. And yeah, I just invite people to come along and perform at Ellisland when I can. And yeah, singing, I've been singing for a very long time, and playing my fiddle, and I also play a bit of ukulele as well. So.
Fantastic. So very happy birthday when your 16th comes, which will be before this podcast goes live. So you'll be 16 when everybody sees you. So Sarah, tell us a little bit about your school life and what you did after school.
So I grew up in a place called the Territoire de Belfort, which is an area of France that's basically next to Switzerland. So in the east of France, between Alsace and the Alps, basically. So my dad was French and my mother is Scottish, and she still lives in France. And I grew up in a very tiny village that is mostly known because it's one of France's martyr villages. So it was occupied by Germans, and then some terrible tragedies happened, including 50 men being shot against the church by Nazis. So I grew up with that kind of history. I grew up, so I went to university. After school, I went to university in Strasbourg and studied history and history of art. And then I went to do a postgraduate degree in journalism in Lille, in the north of France. I then worked for a little bit in Paris, and I always tell this story because it makes people laugh. I moved from Paris to Lockerbie, which was quite a shock to the system. I love Lockerbie. Obviously, it was a bit strange to start with because I met my husband, Stuart, who, as I said, is a farmer. I met him online, not in a dating thing, because this was, prehistoric times, so they didn't have anything like Tinder and all that. It was just a sort of chat forum about history and things. So I moved here left my job, left everything, left my whole life behind in 2000. And moved to Scotland, started to work. I worked for the Herald in Glasgow for many years. And then I became production editor for magazines like Dumfries and Galloway Life and all these, that stable of magazines. And yeah, that's my cursus, I suppose.
Tremendous. And Rose, what are you doing at school? Which subjects and what are you planning and doing after school?
So just after the summer, I'm going to be in S5, and so this is my year for doing hires. So I'm going to be doing higher history, English, music, music tech, and drama, I think. So so it's kind of, I'm really into kind of the arts and stuff like that. So it's my dream to one day go to the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland in Glasgow and study, do the traditional music course there, and hopefully get out and become a musician, a professional musician, and hopefully tour around the world and maybe release an album, hopefully. And I'd also quite like to be involved with like the face stuff, so I can go around and teach kids at school as well. So yeah.
Tremendous. Great ambitions. And you know people who have done the traditional music course before?
So I kind of got inspired, I kind of found out about the conservatoire because we know, for example, Emily Smith and Claire Hastings and Robin Stapleton, and my music teacher, Leona Mason, she also went there. So there's quite a lot of people that I know that have went there and done the course that I want to do. So I think that is one of the main reasons that I'd like to go there, because I know so many people that have went there and have really gone there and have really benefited from it as well. So.
Once a mum, always a mum, eh? And that's great that you can name drop these stars, people that I certainly I have, I'm sure Jim has enjoyed them, their performances over the years. There are some tremendous acts.
Well, all these people, all these women in particular, to come back to Burns, they're actually great Burns performers. All these, Claire and Robin and Emily. Obviously, Emily Smith's a trustee at Ellisland, but I think it's something about, I don't know if it's the Lowland accent or the way they sing Burns, but I think they're the best Burns performer in my opinion. And you know, it'd be nice if Rose could emulate them and maybe one day become known as a Burns performer herself, you know.
I'm sure that'll happen. I think she's already known as a Burns performer. And maybe that's a cue for us to ask Rose to do something else for us before we move on to talk about Burns. Can you give us something else?
Yep. So I'm going to play Parcel of Rogues, which is by Robert Burns on my fiddle.
Tremendous. So that was fantastic. Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, so Parcel of Rogues, what a great song and a great tune. And obviously it was set down in the Solway, and it has got great connotations for Scotland as a nation, going back through history. Anyway, that gets us started with Burns, and we see you've got Burns the Revolutionary behind you there, which makes up for me not having a print behind me tonight, so that's tremendous. But I'll ask Jim to talk to you about your interest in Burns and perhaps get you talking a little bit about what's happening at Ellisland. Over to you, Jim.
Thanks, Douglas. Hi, everybody. I mean, I'm really keen to get the Ellisland story out there tonight, but of today. But in the first instance, can you maybe just tell us how you happened to bump into Burns in the first place? Given your
well, I think it kind of started in primary. It was just always a kind of thing we did in primary, round about Burns time. We always kind of learned about Burns. And at school we had many kind of Burns competitions, but it was nothing like big or anything. And I remember just learning wee snippets of poems. And then when I kind of got into music, because I heard Emily Smith and Jamie McLennan perform, they came into school, and that was kind of where I got into like music, because my teacher, Mrs. Anderson, she said, oh, you should go to Rainbow Tribe in Annan, and you'll meet Barbara Lewis. And it was kind of Barbara that got me involved in the Burns competition, the schools one that happens in Dumfries. And yeah, it was kind of there that I started liking Burns, and I started doing a lot more of Burns. And then it was just one day I started to be asked to events to sing at, and one day I was invited to Ellisland and by Ronnie, and that went really well. And then I kept getting asked back, and now this is where we are, basically.
Yeah.
And what about you, Mum? How did you get?
Well, it's so as I said, Burns wasn't really in my sort of life when I grew up. I obviously, in France, he's known, but and we sing "Ce n'est qu'un au revoir," which is, obviously Auld Lang Syne. But it's not until I fell in love with Burns through Rose, really, and through going to Ellisland. So it's been almost 10 years now. And for me, it really was falling in love. It was, I sort of fell hook, line and sinker with the music, the poetry, his life. and fell in love with Ellisland itself, which I think's got this magic that makes it a very easy place to fall in love with. And yes, we as a family, he's just part of our life. You know, Rose basically turns into Haggis during Burns supper season, because I ferry her to so many. And then obviously we do the Burns competitions every year, and Rose has been lucky enough to go to the national competitions every year as well. So that's been exciting, and she's won many times. And the other two boys as well, they've started taking part in that. And I always find it such a wonderful place, because although I'm always terrified for my own children, I'm in awe of the quality of the stuff we see there. I mean, I've been floored by some of the children, you know, who just, you know, their power of the way they interpret Burns is just magical. And we've made lovely friends during those competitions, and there's been performers that particularly stick in my mind, like obviously Rowan Hasty and Gregor Grace and people like that, who are just, yeah, wonderful.
There's a lot to be said for the national competition run by the federation. It amazes me. I don't know how many years I've been going, and just as a shout out, if you can go to one, people, it's really, really worth the time, because I still can't understand how, you know, a 10-year-old gets up in front of 500 people and performs like a professional. It's just amazing. However, Rosie, where else have you been? You know, you're talking about doing other events. Where else have you been invited to
So I've been lots of places before. Like, I think the furthest I've been in Scotland is up to Strathpeffer. When we were invited, me and some people I've sang with before, we were invited up to sing as part of the Fèis at this event there, which was really cool. And
you sing Red Rose in Gaelic.
Yeah, we sang Red Rose in Gaelic, which was cool. And I think one of my favourite places I've been is Russia. When I got invited last year, just before everything kind of kicked off, I got invited there because Jane Brown asked if I would like to go, and then I got involved with like Tom and Elizabeth Clark, and
St. Petersburg Forum.
And the St. Petersburg Forum. And so yeah, we went out to St. Petersburg for a week, and that was just, it was like a dream. It was just so amazing. We met so many amazing people, and we did so many amazing things, and that was one of my favorite memories. We were actually talking in my music course that I've been doing this week, what was your favorite like kind of music memory? And one of my favorites was we were in the hotel, and it was a Burns supper, and lots of the Russians got up to sing Russian songs, and then the Scottish group, we got up to sing some Scottish songs, and then we started to play Killiecrankie, and lots of the Russian people just joined in, and we all had like Scottish hats on, and everyone was just like laughing and singing, and it was just
the joy. It was just a joyous moment.
It was just really amazing.
Yeah, and tremendous.
Obviously, yeah, I've been to recite, not sing, but to recite the address to the Haggis at the Scottish Parliament, which was an amazing opportunity at the presiding officer's Burns supper. So that was really cool.
This is, Petersburg Forum does an awful lot of work, and they're great people as well. It must have been very enjoyable. But I think it's, I mean, obviously you're heavily involved, the both of you, with Ellisland. So if we can maybe just start with you, Sarah, what's happening in Ellisland as we speak?
So what's happening is that last year a new trust was appointed to take over from the old trust, which was, since the 1920s, it had been made up of ex officio members. It was people like, you know, the Provost of Dumfries and the High Sheriff and all that. And the new trust is made up of people who know a lot about Burns or know a lot about museums, or both, or who are heavily involved in, you know, the Burns world in some way or another. And yeah, so I was very honoured to be asked to be a trustee, and we have taken over and found out that actually there was a lot to do. There's you know, we needed to secure core funding really, because pretty much it was going to be a difficult future for Ellisland had we not found funding. And I mean, it's been so many wonderful people have looked after Ellisland over the years, but now it just needed to step up a bit to, you know, to be able to stay open for future generations. And yeah, we've secured quite a number of grants. But obviously there's a lot of work to do, because mainly we want it to wash its face, you know, and be able to be open for as many people as possible. We've now got a 5-year business plan sorted, and yes, we've got lots of ambitions, and yeah, we're very excited. The thing I'm most excited at the moment is we've commissioned, we got funding from the National Lottery to commission a condition survey and an archaeological survey, and by this man called Will Napier, and he's found some depressing things in the sense that there's a lot of you know, work to be done on the actual buildings, but he's also found out so many really exciting things about the history and the makeup of the building. So a lot of things that we thought were true for decades and that we've been telling people are in fact not true. And there's a whole new world that we're discovering, and all these new information coming out. So we're going to have a Zoom conference with Will, who's going to explain all the findings, and I'm really excited to find out about that.
So when can people go?
So hopefully within the next few months, really, hopefully August or possibly September, but we'll make sure that, you know, lots of people know about it.
Yeah, and I take it people will obviously, given the current circumstances, will need to book in advance to go?
Yes, we'll need to book in advance. It'll be a Zoom link, and we'll make sure that as many people as possible can attend. First, before that, we'll have our AGM, which will be open obviously for all members. I'm glad to say we've got more, you know, our members have multiplied by about 5 in the last year, so that's exciting as well. So we're going to have an AGM where we're going to explain, you know, what we've been doing, present all our finances and all that, so just to make sure that everybody knows what's happening.
And in relation to membership, could you maybe just explain how people become members?
So all you need to do is go onto the website, which is ellislandfarm.co.uk, and there are 3 options to become a member. You can either pay an individual membership, which is £15. You can have we also have the 1788 circle for clubs. So that's open to any affiliated Burns Club or St Andrews Society, that kind of group. And then we also have the Glencairn circle, which is for patrons. Obviously Glencairn was himself Burns' patron, so that's open to, you know, businesses or people who want to fund us a bit more.
Any plans for the events at Ellisland?
Yes, so we've got an event at Christmas planned, but hopefully before that we're going to have a series of events. We're hoping to have a barbecue at some point, sort of late August, but we haven't quite finalised the plans really. It's all sort of, since the reopening, we've suddenly had all these people, and it's been, you know, we've had a lot to organise and deal with. So yes, we'll finalise the plans and get them publicised. The difficulty at Ellisland is that the barn it's a wonderful space, but it isn't huge, you know, it's sort of 60 people max, and with social distancing, obviously that just doesn't make it viable. So we're hoping that eventually we'll be able to get people back in, but we're also hoping that, and that is also valid for the long term, we're also hoping to be able to organise lots of outdoor events, and we're also working on plans for poetry tours and musical tours, and tours with sort of added value, basically.
And I assume that all the information required for anybody who wants to come will be on the website.
Yes, it will be on the website. At the moment, for a normal tour, which costs only £5, you have to book. You have to book in advance, 24 hours notice, and you get a tour by a volunteer. So it's often Rose Path. I'm a guide. I'm a tour guide. And when I do the tour, Rose comes with me and she sings Ellisland songs, and people do like that. So that's nice. We've had an amazing variety of people come on the tours. We've had people who know nothing about Burns. And then we've also had, specialists about really niche things about Burns, like people who want to know all about his, him as a Freemason, or his, and yesterday I had somebody quiz me about his surviving children and where they were buried and all that, and I was sort of, I had a slight doubt, and then somebody told me that his sons were buried in Cheltenham, which I didn't know, and that they had been in the military, so that helped a bit. But I always think, oh, they're going to ask me questions about it. I always think, well, do you know what, I know actually more than I think I know.
You almost let us have a wee cue there when you said that Rose sings when she comes on the tour with you, and I wonder if that would be a great opportunity for us to add an extra song in. Could you manage an extra one for us, Rose?
Yeah, so this is the song that we sing when we start the tour, and sorry, I'm talking for Rose, but this is the Plumen, and I always start in the courtyard and talk about the Plumen poet, and people are actually very interested in the farming aspects of Ellisling and Burns as a farmer. So
this is the Plumen. A Plumen, he's a bonny lad, his heart is ever true, Joe. His garter's net below his knee, and his bonnet it is blue, Joe. Then up wade all my Plumen lads, hey my merry Plumen, oh I've all the trades a tidy ken, commend me to my Plumen. My Plumen, he comes hame at Dean, he's often wet and weary. Take off the wet, put on the dry, and go to bed, my dearie. Then up wade all my Plumen lads, hi my merry Plumen, oh I've all the trades a tidy ken, commend me to the Plumen. I he east and I he west, and I be not St. Johnston, but the bonniest sick that I saw was my Plumen laddie dancing. Then up wade all my Plumen lads, hey my merry Plumen, oh I've all the trades a tidy ken, commend me to the Plumen. Snow white stockings on his legs, and silver buckles glancing, a gay blue bonnet on his head, and oh, but he was handsome. Then up wade all my Plumen lads, hey my merry Plumen, oh I've all the trades a tidy ken, commend me to the Plumen. Commend me to the barnyard and the corn boom man. Oh, I never got my coggy food till I met with my Plumen. Then up wade all my Plumen lads, hey my merry Plumen, oh I've all the trades a tidy ken. Commend me to the Plumen.
Rose, that was tremendous again, and can we be greedy and see when we get to the end of here, can you manage another one for us? Brilliant. You were going to say that as well, Jim, were you?
I think he's another bad, please. It's just like, seriously, see the first song at the introduction. I was feeling the hairs on my legs standing up, seriously. And it just to be able to sing without any affection and just be so bland about such a talent is, I just find it mesmerising.
Rose, can I ask you about the young ambassador or the youth ambassador? What do you actually have to do? You mentioned organising a Christmas concert and things. What else have you had to do?
Well, it was kind of about, how many years ago now? Has it been
3 years?
3 or
3,
4 years, something like that. And I was just surprised with the honour at this Burn Supper I was at. And yeah, since then I've had, it's events that I've organised and helped to organise. For example, we normally have a children's concert at kind of springtime, and I help to like get the people to come and perform. And for example, I look out at the Burns competition and see if there's any kind of rising stars that we could have at Ellisland and stuff like that. Yeah, it's always really fun listening at the Burns competition to see who could we get at Ellisland, and I'm always kind of on the watch for people that I could invite, because I think it's really important to invite like young people, especially like kids that are maybe just starting to get into Burns. I always think it's really great to have them to come and perform. But yeah, I've been doing the biggest thing I've been doing is the Christmas concert, which I decided that one year I thought it would be really cool. So I asked lots of kind of young people from around this area and from places I'd met at other music things before from around Scotland, and they came and performed, as did the BBC Radio 2 Folk Album of the Year award winners, Josie Duncan and Pablo Lafuente, who I know really well, and they're really, really nice. So they came and performed, and that was the first concert. And then the year after that, it was such a great success that we wanted to do it again. So we invited Hannah Rarity that time and Anna Massey. And yeah, but obviously last year we weren't able to do it, but fingers crossed we're able to do it this year. So.
I own the 5 this year.
Yeah, so yeah.
Tremendous. And you talked about, Sara, you getting into Burns through Rose. And one of the questions we often ask people is, you know, which memorable Burns event or Burns supper have they been to? But I would imagine that a lot of your memorable ones have been where Rose has been performing.
Yes, it's been at you know, seeing her sort of grow in that in confidence and grow in her knowledge of Burns, and because now it's astonishing. She knows, you know, I don't know, you can sing by heart about 25 songs and recite. You know, yesterday she reeled off the Rights of Women at Ellisland. You just recited it, and I'm just completely, you know, I couldn't do that. Clearly, I've got fog brain now, but yeah, just so I've and then through listening to other performers, because often, who was it the other day? Somebody asked me what my favorite Burns song was, and I couldn't really think. And I did think, obviously, it's about how beautiful the song is itself, but it's a lot to do with the performer, isn't it? So there's some songs, for example, the lyric when it's sung by Corinne Polwart, I think it's absolutely heartbreakingly beautiful. But then I've heard it sung by other people and I don't like it so much. You know, I think it's there's just ways of performing that you know, I think that, for example, Robin Stapleton, she's an amazing Burns performer. And then Leona Mason, I think I just love her. Fair Helen is just beautiful.
Any further?
That's one of these pauses where Jim and I are looking at each other, trying to decide who's going to speak next.
Well, I've got a question again for Rosie. Any ambitions unfulfilled as yet?
Well, it's always been like, I've been in the Burns competition for like many years now, ever since I was at the age to do it, and I've always luckily managed to get to the finals, which has been amazing, but I've never actually been young Burnsian before. Like,
You've always won.
Yeah,
I've won the overall singer, but never actual.
I've never
Burnsian.
actually won Young Burnsian. I mean, for example, I've been to like Russia and I've been to all these amazing places, but I've never actually won Young Burnsian, which is like a big goal in life.
I've got 2 more years, no pressure.
No pressure at all.
We've so missed it this year and last, you know, it's been.
I just think it's a joy, and I go every time I can, and have been for years. But
you know what I find a shame, and I think that's something we need to work on, and that's something that Rose has also said she'd like to help with, is that it tends to be that at the Burns competitions there's loads and loads of primary school kids, and then beginning of secondary, you know, there's some, and then sort of as they get older, I don't know whether kids think, you know, Burns is no longer cool or whatever, the numbers tend to go down, which is a great pity, because some of the performers at that age, they're just fantastic.
I remember for recitation, like one of my first years doing recitation, there was about 30 or 40 in the class, and then last time I was at the Burns competition in the recitation, it was just me and Rowan Hasty, so it was a bit strange just to be us two.
I think that's a you know, something that I don't know how you could really. There must be ways we can get sort of older young people into, you know, to keep loving Burns, you know.
That normally S5 and S6 used to be, you know, up until, well, I think the last time I was at a competition was about 3 years ago now, but I remember we did one at Dunfermline, and the competition, we had quite a lot of, particularly girls, S5, S6 age, and they were brilliant, to be honest. There's some of them from up Aberdeen way that were just stunningly good.
Yeah.
Normally we lose people, we get lost for the Burns world when they leave school and go to university or go into, and life just takes over. And then at some point they usually come back.
Yeah, but it's nice in the young traditional music scene, which is actually flourishing. You know, there's so many young trad performers and musicians. They all, you know, all of them at some point they have a Burns tune or a Burns song, which is lovely. You know, even the really cool ones.
I wouldn't know what cool was if I was a youth.
I always tell people at Ellisland that, you know, Bob Dylan's favourite poem is Red, Red Rose. So, you know, cool people all over the world.
Unfortunately, Bob Dylan's only cool to people, you know, within striking distance of my age.
I don't know. I would love to get him down to Ellisland. That'd be good.
That could be tremendous. But there are also other people out there that have declared an interest in Burns from different eras of rock or pop music. So it's good to know that people still recognise it. Sara, can I take you back to farming? I'm quite interested in the fact that, you know, you guys live on a farm, and you're promoting an 18th century farm. But you live in a 21st century farm. What are the big striking differences between the two?
Well, I suppose that, you know, to put it simply, it's machinery. You know, I always go on about how Burns, you know, obviously his first crop was disastrous, and then, you know, it was, you know, ruinous bargain. The soil was depleted, and it was such a hard time when he was doing arable. Then he switched to dairy, and you know, but really the essence of it hasn't changed. You know, the passion for the land and the way that Burns talks about farming, it's just what I hear my husband say, you know, about the passing of the seasons, and, you know, seeing the animals. Obviously at Burns, at Ellisland, the wounded hare, we've got the wounded hare manuscript, and then there's a field where the actual hare was shot. And we've been seeing lots of hares at the moment, and Stuart was talking about the hares. And I was thinking, gosh, it's amazing, you know, that it's eternal. It's you know, that thread runs through farming life. And actually, Stuart, he's been, during lockdown, he did a lot of research in his family history, and he's found out that he thinks that because obviously Burns brought the Ayrshire cows he's the one who brought the Ayrshire cows to Dumfries and Galloway, and he thinks that the Stuart's family, who's been here at Gimminby since, you know, forever, we got some of the cows from either from Ellisland or descendants of these cows. So there's a link between us and
fantastic.
Living link, yeah.
So a connection with Burns through the cows.
I know. Who knew?
Excellent. And Rose, can you talked briefly earlier on about the number of instruments that you played, and you went fairly quickly, so we didn't get to hear about how many there were. Can you bring them off again, please?
So obviously I sing and I play my fiddle as well, and I've kind of picked up the ukulele as well, so I accompany myself on some of the songs I do. And I used to play a bit of piano, but not so much anymore. And I've also got a mandolin, which I'm starting to learn. So yeah, but it's mainly voice, fiddle, and ukulele.
Yeah, and do you have any ambitions to play any other instruments?
Well, I really, really like the bagpipes. I just love listening to like a pipe band, but I think like my face would look a bit weird playing the bagpipes. So I don't know. It's but I also really like the accordion as well. But obviously I'm already playing the fiddle and the ukulele, and I'm starting to learn the mandolin. So I think I'll probably keep it there at the moment. But yeah, I do really like listening to like pipe bands and stuff like that. But yeah, I just don't know if the bagpipes are really for me.
Actually, we could have an Ellisland house band, because Jerry Carruthers, he plays the guitar.
Yeah.
Did I hear him mention that he wanted to play the drums? And then Dr. David Hopes, he plays the accordion beautifully. And then obviously, Rose, you have all these instruments. We could have some sort of...
Well, our fellow club member who's working with you at the moment, Colin McNally, is a bit of a fiddler as well.
Yes, well, there you go. Have a band.
Yes. So have a word with Colin. I'm sure he would join the band. Jim, anything else we want to ask Sara and Rose before we get another song from Rose?
No, I've no questions, and I'm a greedy man, so I'm quite happy to just sit back and listen to that voice again, if that's possible, please.
That was the first song you said.
Yeah, this is Rattlin' Roaring Willie, and yeah, it was one of the first songs I sang at Ellisland. It's always a kind of song I sing to open like the sets that I do and stuff like that. And yeah, I really like this song because it's a man talking about his love for his fiddle. But in real life, like the real Rattlin' Roaring Willie got hung for murder, apparently. So, but yeah, this is a Burns song, and it's quite short and sweet. So hope you enjoy. Oh, Rattlin' Roaring Willie, oh, hail to the fair and party sell his fiddle and buy some of their wear. The Puritan way his fiddle is salter plenty. Oh, Rattlin' Roaring Willie, you're welcome home to me. Oh, Willie, come sell your fiddle, say fine. Oh, Willie, come sell your fiddle and buy a pint of wine. If I was to sell my fiddle, I won't think me mad. For many said unto day, my fiddle and I he had. As I come back, Crockhill and I can't keep it ben, a Rattlin' Roaring Willie was in a chamber dead. He was sitting a chambered and among the company. Oh, rattling Northern Billy, you're welcome him to me. Oh, rattling Northern Billy, oh, he'll to the fair and 40 sails, fiddling by some other bear. He picked him with his fiddle after Blinty's ear. Oh, rattling Northern Billy, you're welcome him to me. Thank you.
Fantastic. That was tremendous.
Thank you.
Can I finish off with maybe an awkward question, Sarah? You leaked to us that there's a lot of work going on in Ellisland and kind of repositioning things and such like. Are there any nuggets in there that you can tease the audience with that will attract them to come to Ellisland when you're fully opened?
What could I tease you with? To be honest, I haven't had lots of information, bits about whether it's about what buildings were there post pre-Burns, at Burns's time, and post Burns, and finding out what buildings Burns built himself. Obviously he got money from Patrick Miller to build the farmhouse, but it was quite a lot of money, and he involved an architect and everything, but I think we're going to find out more about what he actually built himself.
Sounds fascinating. Good. And you mentioned earlier on about how you're going to position Ellisland as a museum. You talked about the connection with poetry and the connection with song and such like. Any more thoughts on that?
Well, what we'd really like to do is really just preserve the spirit of Ellisland. So we have no great ambitions to make it into a big centre with big glass buildings and everything. What we want to keep is that impression that, as I often say, you sort of expect Burns to be working in the garden and Jean to be in the dairy somewhere, and we just want to keep that. But our ambitions are to make sure that it's conserved and that the buildings are conserved. That's not to say that we don't want to open things like a cafe and accessible toilets and all these things. But we also want to, we have plans to maybe at some point have a, Scots Language Festival, things that will attract people who are not even just interested in Burns, but in music, in the romantic poetry movement, in all these things, and just the beauty of the site as well.
Sounds exciting. Can I finally ask you, you've talked a little bit about doing the tours of Ellisland and Rose singing on these tours. How would you feel about doing an episode of this podcast from Ellisland and perhaps letting us see some of what there is to attract visitors to Ellisland, and perhaps
Absolutely.
Rose could put a couple of songs into that as well? Is that something worth doing in the future?
That'd be great, and we could show you special, the special objects we have, of which there are many. There's a few of my favourites that I could tell you about, and yes, wonderful.
That would be tremendous. Thank you very much. So really just leaves me with the pleasure of saying thank you very much for telling us about...
Thank you so much for having us. We're very honoured.
Tremendous. But thank you for telling us about your lives with Robert Burns. Thanks very much.
Thank you.